Hello and what is up YouTube? My name is G3Iron and today we have a discussion question for all of us. So pick one thing that makes you the most excited to try a new build. First off, thanks to everybody, all 260 of you who voted in this particular poll. We're going to be going through some of the comments and reacting to some of this. This was a fantastic turnout, first off, for poll results, but then it was also pretty surprising. I didn't think compelling mechanics would actually take the top spot. Anyway, we'll get into the discussion here in just a moment. If you are new to the channel, you can go ahead and like, subscribe, and ding the bell to be notified about more videos just like this one. If you're a veteran of the channel, then you know the way how all this works. There are timestamps placed above my entirely clean-shaven forehead, and you can jump forward or backward and revisit any of our discussion points at your convenience. So, our question today had 5 different answers on our poll that you could potentially pick. So, what's one thing that makes you the most excited to try out or play a new build? The first option was seeing gameplay of a build in action with video and maybe replay footage or GIFs. Second was compelling mechanics, in other words, learning new interactions in the game. Third was hearing about the content the build can do, so bossing or mapping. Whether or not it's a deep diving build, whether or not it's a fast clearing build, whether or not it's built for specific content like farming masters or repeatable content like farming metamorphs. Then fourth, we had seeing the budget for the build, which would of course incorporate cost of items. And then fifth and finally, hey, something else entirely, like I forgot to include something in the above mentioned 4 categories. So first off, K-Trim said the first thought that comes through his mind and makes him most excited is this better be more successful than the last build, which is a great humorous way to start off with. So what is, and here's a question for you all to drop a comment down below and let me know, what was your, or what is your story of the least successful build you've ever played? For me, it's between 2 characters. One was a low-life cold damage occultist that I tried to level up in hardcore in synthesis, and it was the worst because I never actually got to experience what a cold vortex low life spell casting anything occultist could do because I was playing hardcore in synthesis, and I kept dying in Act 3. Like 3 different witch attempts, I just kept dying in Act 3. 2 of them died in Act 3, 1 of them died in Act 4 to Duresso, which was just utterly embarrassing. I think I ran out of flasks and I just said, screw it, I don't want to log out. We'll see if I can kill him anyway. Anyway, so yes, K-Trim, you are absolutely right that has got to be... That's got to be on the forefront of the thought process when picking a new build. Boy, I hope it's more successful than the last build. Mr. C says mechanics, but also discovery. Like if I see a certain combo of unique skills, passives not being used that I would think would be cool together, I like to be able to test them out, like my Akunas plus Queens Hunger build. Now this is what was surprising to me about these poll results, is that 48% out of 260 people said compelling mechanics, learning new interactions. I actually thought going into this that pretty much everybody would say, look, we have to see gameplay. That is the #1 thing that gets us excited. But the reality is that y'all don't think it's gameplay that gets you excited. And in fact, when you look at the numbers, 75% of poll results said it's not gameplay. Only a fourth of people who responded said that it is gameplay, visualized gameplay, that actually gets them most excited for a new build. 75% of the rest broke down among the next 4 responses, with 48% of those people saying compelling mechanics, or 48% of the total poll, not 48% of 75. I can do math. Compelling mechanics are the reason to try a new particular build. And on the one hand, I'm actually very encouraged by this because Path of Exile has got so many different mechanics that we're learning something new pretty much every day. Hello, I'm G3Iron. I have thousands of hours across 2 different accounts, one standalone account, one Steam account. Thousands of hours put into Path of Exile, and I'm still learning new stuff every single day, or maybe I'm relearning stuff that I just never took the time to learn in the first place, or I learned it and I'd forgotten it. Like, there are so many different compelling mechanics in Path of Exile that to me this was a really, really healthy sign of this poll. That just because you see something and it's flashy or it's exciting That's not actually the most exciting thing, because a lot of builds can be flashy and can be exciting if you put enough investment into them, as opposed to if you find something that's got unique and compelling mechanics that show off new interactions that maybe you didn't know before. That's actually, to me, a really, really exciting thing that's anecdotally about our community locally here in G3, but then as we expand it out for us as a community of players at Path of Exile, I think this is really, really healthy and a good sign, because if players are driven by compelling mechanics, and we're telling GGG that we're driven by compelling mechanics, then that means that they're going to continue to give us compelling mechanics to interact with. So that was a very, very encouraging part of this particular poll. David Powell says, this one is pretty easy for me. I like builds that are relatively easy to play, which can do the league mechanic well, and most importantly, look and feel good. That's number one. Also, I prefer to try new skills rather than the same old, same old. I find info on the forums, Reddit, and YouTube, and then I cross-reference on POE Ninja. Yes, I'm an analytical type. I can say, though, that it is difficult to imagine what it will look like. I didn't think I would like Winter Orb or Cyclone before I tried them, because I didn't think I would like Channeling. Boy, was I wrong about that. I can say amen on that. Like, absolutely. Second your opinion there, David. In that I thought I would hate Winter Orb. I was watching so many people play Winter Orb that I thought it was an absolutely disgusting skill. I didn't think it was fun. It reminded me of Blade Vortex, which I played Blade Vortex a couple of different times, and I just can't ever really get the hang of Blade Vortex personally. It's an incredibly strong skill, and it has been throughout the course of its lifetime in Path of Exile, but I just haven't enjoyed that style of gameplay. Well, Winter Orb reminded me of that, and so I thought, well, I've tried, Blade Vortex, and therefore, if Winter Orb is like Blade Vortex, I won't like it. Then I actually played Winter Orb, and I was like, oh boy, I hope they never nerf this, and I can just play this forever. So, it's interesting what happens when you actually try out some of the things that maybe you thought you wouldn't like, and they actually turn out to be some of your favorite builds. Blinky says, in my opinion, gameplay kind of trumps all else, at least in non-league start scenarios. If the currency is good enough, I can trudge through a week or so with a not-so-fun build, but it makes me grow tired of the game quickly. It's a great point, Blinky. I mean, we're playing a game here. I feel like I have to say this every other week or so. Like, we're playing a game when we play Path of Exile. This is our hobby time. Nobody else gets to determine what we're doing. We don't have a boss or an employer that's telling us what we need to do. We don't have, obligations to friends or family or our community in this regard. It's just you and POE, and you get to decide how you want to build your character, how you want to interact with the game. And so if the gameplay of your particular build isn't fun and enjoyable for you, then it's not going to last very long, and it's going to make you want to hate the build and hate the game. So here is just one really quick tip. If you are at a stage where you are not sure about whether or not you enjoy your build or not, we've actually got another video and another discussion on whether or not you're burning out and how to actually interact and know when to change from a build, and whether or not it's the build that is boring to you or whether or not it's POE that's boring to you. And there will be some kind of floaty link around here as well as included in the video description that you can go and watch that extended discussion as well. Shanae says, something off meta for this, and at least the previous league tends to attract my interest. Skills I haven't used in a long time also. This is a great point. One of the things that I like to do is I actually like to play things that were meta a couple of leagues ago, because there's a lot of data out there on it. There's a lot of different builds. There's a lot of different perspectives. There's probably a lot of different cataloged resources on what sorts of content a particular build can do. So oftentimes I might play something that's meta, but more often than not, I find myself playing something that was meta a league or two ago and then trying to see how the nerfs that have come through on various patches and updates have changed things, or maybe things just haven't even gotten nerfed whatsoever. Maybe instead of a nerf, something simply has been passed by or surpassed by something else in popularity, which is great because it means you don't have to account for a nerf whatsoever. So it's really fun to go back and take a look at older builds that maybe aren't necessarily meta during the present league, but are indeed fun and thorough in terms of their ability to tackle content throughout the game. Tess Seeger 2000 says, if a build doesn't have gameplay, I don't trust it. Everyone can talk big path of building numbers, but I actually want to see it perform. People will obviously just show the good sides of the build, but still, especially in 3.9 with all the boss buffs, I want to see it take down endgame content and maybe take a hit or two. This is a great point, and it's time for us to slow down and have a little mini discussion here. So in our featured weekly build series, where we show off different builds, generally speaking, we try to show off gameplay in those particular discussions. Now, in our generalized recommended builds for league starts, we often don't have time to show gameplay, right? So for instance, if we've got, let's say, I don't know, 25 minutes worth of footage that we would need to include for discussion for 6 different builds, that essentially gives us what, 6 different builds over the course of 24 minutes with an introduction and a conclusion. That's essentially like 4 minutes per build, right? That's barely enough time to tell you pros and cons, let alone to get into all the unique interactions of a particular build. And then if you want to add gameplay on top of it, you're not actually going to be referencing the build guide and showing people what the build guide looks like and how and why it's a valuable build guide. You're just going to be showing gameplay. In my opinion, and this could be a completely wrong opinion, you all could disagree with me, and that's totally, completely fine. Feel free to let me know down in the comments below. But I think it's more important and more essential in that time to show you and explain and work through the guide than it is to show you gameplay. And here's why. If a guide is well written and includes gameplay, then you can go and check out the gameplay footage, and you'll know this is a good guide that I can rely on, that I can save as a bookmark tab and keep open as I am leveling this character, and all of the different questions that I've got as I'm progressing this character will be answered by this forum guide. Or if they're not already answered, then the forum guide creator is actually interactive enough to respond and to give us means and mechanisms to respond, whether that's on Twitch, whether that's on Twitter, whether that's on the forum, whether that's through Reddit, whether that's through YouTube. All sorts of different ways that different build guide creators make themselves available to answer questions. So to me, it's more essential and important to show that, to show the mechanics and to show you this is a well-written forum guide that you can trust rather than just showing gameplay. That being said, I do agree with you, Test Seeger. For the most part, I don't recommend builds that don't show gameplay, because if you don't show gameplay, then we have no actual proof of your concept in actual game terms. Like you said, anybody can throw something together in Path of Building, check all the boxes, and make it look just amazing on Path of Building. But the reality is, as you say, especially with boss buffs in 3.9 and Metamorph and across the Atlas of the Conquerors, we need to see if your build can survive the content that you're claiming it can survive. So I'm very, very sensitive to that, and hopefully you guys will let me know down in the comments below about what you think that approach should be in the future. But that's been my approach thus far, is prioritize the gameplay and the forum guide over the video footage. Option Dezo says, I generally break it down to 3 things. First off, is it a strong league starter or second character after you have established a base of currency in a new league? Second, is it meta or off meta? It helps determine if the endgame items for it will be affordable. And thirdly, is it on GGG's nerf radar? Dezo, I think this is a great list and an absolutely wonderful prioritization of exactly how you can think about approaching a particular build. Dezo continues, for Metamorph League, I started with Baron Necro, which got nerfed. Remember? Everybody remember the development manifesto that said zombies were getting nerfed? Oh no, zombies are getting nerfed, no! Everybody was crying, and now all of a sudden, oh, zombies are broken, they need to be nerfed. Anyway, so supposedly Baron Necro got nerfed, but it actually is just slightly better than before it got buffed. Then I made a Castwell channeling Volatile Dead Necro, which also got nerfed and had 2 bugs that they had to fix. By the time I made my Volatile Dead Necro, the first bug was fixed, and when I was doing endgame with her, they fixed the second bug. I mainly used the Baron Necro for big boss fighting, Cirrus, Shaper, Elder, and the Volatile Dead Necro for maps and Delve. And because I only made 2 characters this league, I have a lot of spare currency to tinker with odds and ends. That is a great description. Hey, I've got one particular build for mapping and for clearing and for progressing the Atlas, and I've got another build that's good for bossing. I myself have been an altaholic this entire league. I think I've got 5 characters that are level 85 plus now. But that being said, maybe some of you out there are like me and you just keep having fun building new characters. Maybe you're focused and you've got, just a 1 or 2 characters that you're working on. I will say it is a good recommendation and a wise thing to do to at least have 2 characters, one that can progress through maps quickly in order to spawn taunts if you're looking to progress your watchstones, and then one character that's just dedicated and excels at boss fighting for actually taking out conquerors and taking out Cirrus reliably. Cowsad says, gotta get that meme build with screen clearing, and don't forget that Lua eye blinding effects with insane brain power needed to create it. Yeah, that's at least a 140 IQ play right there. To release is to resolve says, I like cheap builds. If the entire build costs more than 3 exalts, I'm out. That's actually another very viable and great approach, right? If you know, for instance, that you don't want to spend a whole bunch of currency on a build before you know if the build is actually for you, then you're going to like cheap builds. And one of the things that I love to do is actually comb the forums and look for build guides that are not only well written, but also have got a relatively tight budget, or have got a big budget, but with budget options included in the forum guide. I love showing those kinds of builds off. Samuel says, if it is SSF capable is what I see first. That's great. It's great to see that we've got the SSF community involved in our particular discussion today. Oak says, yes, definitely mechanics, but I had no idea how Bane Occultist worked before this league, but wow, I am impressed. It's not the fastest, but after a little investment, it can clear anything. It feels great when you get to go build a character and actually see how it progresses from concept to reality, where you get to go from, how do those interactions actually work, and where does the DPS come from, and what are your layers of survivability, and going from there all the way over to the reality of the experience of playing a character to its fullest extent. Brian Z says, first league, but I've wanted to try a build that can freeze bosses. We'll probably start on a character in a week or so. So this sometimes will come up where you'll see a mechanic that maybe you've never tried before, and so you look at it, you do some research, and you go out and you try to see what are the different options to actually make this build work. This can be a bit tricky, so just a word of warning to you, Brian. If you are looking for a build to go off of one particular mechanic, and this is your first league, I would recommend that you go wide in your search for various builds that are trying to do what you are trying to do. Go very wide in your search, so pull up maybe 5 or 6 different builds, and then see what are some of the common themes in those builds. The common themes might be items, which means, okay, I definitely need these items in order to make this work. It might be ascendancies, okay, that tells me what character I need to play. It might be passive trees. Maybe the ascendancies are different or the characters are different, but the passive tree is majoritively on like the top left or the top right or the bottom, right? Like maybe you can take a look and see, okay, what are the commonalities? Do they pick up jewel sockets? Is this a really heavy jewel build? Is this a build that's particularly reliant on one particular keystone for a defensive layer, whether that's mind over mana or something else? But you can look for commonalities by spreading out your search very far and wide, which will help give you a better sense of what it takes to actually make that mechanic function. Sometimes some build creators will find one way to make a build function, and another build creator will find, without collaborating with one another, will find a completely different way to make that same style of build function. And what you can do is you can either build a hybrid, or you can choose which one of those two you've got as an option. So I would recommend that you go wide in your search as this is your first league, and that way you get a healthy foundation built up of knowledge for you to make decisions as you build your character. Michael Stroffolino says, going out and buying, crafting all of my gear for the character compels me. I think that's a great argument. And in this particular league, with so many different new exalted orbs for us to use, and with so many different new influence types for us to craft on, sometimes one of the most exciting things to do is to craft something and then go, ooh, what sort of build can I come up with that really takes advantage of this particular item? So I know I've done that for at least one character this league, and it was quite a fun thing to do, to go, oh man, at what level do I finally get to use that thing that I've crafted? It really functions as kind of like a psychological motivator for you to play the character to get to a particular level where you can finally use that particular piece of gear that you've self-crafted and really are looking forward to using. Well, thanks so much once again to everybody for voting on our poll. Once again, these are the results. We've got 25% voting for gameplay footage, 48% voting for compelling mechanics, 16% saying hearing about the build, seeing what content it can do, and then 7% said seeing the budget for the build, and 4% said something else entirely. You didn't include X, Y, or Z, Iron. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and I hope today is the day a Mirror of Calandra drops for you. Thanks for watching that video. If you'd like more information on any of our discussion points today, you can see them down below in the video description. If you'd also like to join our Discord or support our Patreon, you can do so with the links down below. Thanks again, and big shout out to all of our Patreon supporters.